Alright, so yesterday in Turkey, there were a couple of absolutely massive earthquakes that have left thousands of people either displaced or missing or dead at this point, and have also contributed to the worsening humanitarian crisis in Syria as well, because these earthquakes, as you can see here from this map, essentially took place down near this southern portion of Turkey, which is pretty close to the Syrian border, where obviously they have been suffering for years now with an ongoing civil war that the United States, of course, has a hand in to a large extent, but this is part of the region where a lot of Syrian refugees have been trying to escape a lot of the turmoil and violence in that country, and so this is just making a bad situation even that much more precarious. But they say here from Common Dreams, thousands dead as twin earthquakes devastate Syria and Turkey, and they start off here saying that thousands of collapsed buildings, which I'll show you a couple of examples of here in a second, as well as widespread destruction and deep anguish, were reported alongside over 2,300 dead. And it seems like this is a low estimate at this point. I'll give you another number here from a different article in a second, but they're saying that thousands more are injured after a pair of earthquakes, an initial 7.8 tremor on the Richter scale, which is gigantic, in the early morning, and another one that measured 7.5 devastated Syria and Turkey on Monday. They say amid dozens of aftershocks and the quakes being felt in Cyprus, Israel, Lebanon, and Egypt, and the occupied Palestinian territories, so absolutely gigantic range that we're talking about here. And they say the full scale of the destruction and the ultimate death toll remains unknown, though early estimates of the dead and wounded were rising by the hour. And if you compare this to other earthquakes that have taken place, there was a big one that took place in 1999, and that left, I think it was like 17 to 20,000 people dead when all was said and done. And this one, it seems like, was potentially significantly worse than the one that took place back in the 90s. So obviously, you know, this is going to be a catastrophic situation for thousands and thousands of people. But they say, according to Turkey's Hurriyet Daily, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan described the quakes as the most severe to hit the nation since 1939, and the first quake occurred just after 4 a.m. local time in the Kahramanmaraş province, sorry if I'm absolutely butchering that name, which is north of the Gaziantep near the Syrian border, while the second took place in southeastern Turkey. And we also have a couple of absolutely insane videos that I'm going to show you here in a second, so let's watch this first one. This was essentially one of the reporters that was on the ground, I think, after the first earthquake took place, and then basically was like live recording his broadcast while the second one hit, and while you're starting to see a lot of these effects from the aftershocks. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this one here.
Binalardan uzak bir noktada toplanma alanlarında vatandaşlarla birlikteyiz. Şu an herkes yine telefonlara sar. Herkes buraya gel. Güvenli alana geçiyoruz bizler şu anda. Vatandaşları da görüyorsunuz. Deprem oluyor gene. Arkadaşlar. Evet şu an.
I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, man, what do you even say about that? That's absolutely insane. I mean, it looks like most of the people who are like right there managed to get out, but again, we're talking about buildings just being absolutely flattened to the ground. And to show you what one example of that actually looked like in real time, I mean, this is like tragic to watch this unfolding, as clearly you probably have people who are either stuck in these buildings or in the surrounding areas that have been, you know, either killed or seriously injured as a result of this. But this is also going to tie into some of the discussions surrounding Turkey's infrastructure and the lack of sort of like a prepared infrastructure to handle these types of earthquakes. But this is what it actually looks like when one of these buildings, which this could apply to, you know, hundreds of different buildings around the region, actually collapses in on itself. Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is, you know, obviously going to take, you know, weeks and weeks, if not months and months and months, to be able to, number one, recover the people who have either been killed or who still remain right now trapped inside a lot of this rubble. And there have been other rescue efforts as well that have been sort of like hampered because of poor weather. I mean, you can see in this clip, it's like raining, it's freezing outside. A lot of the highways had a bunch of damage to them as well, so it's making it that much more difficult for help to come in from other regions that were less affected. and the whole situation is just absolutely horrible, to say the least. But now I want to talk a little bit about, in terms of why a lot of this infrastructure was collapsing in the way that we just saw in that video and in many other places around Turkey and Syria. So here from NPR, they describe what actually happened. They say, in Turkey and Syria, outdated building methods all but assured disaster from the quake. So they say the region is one of the most earthquake prone in the world, as it lies in an area where 3 tectonic plates meet. And in addition to the 1999 quake that left more than 17,000 people dead, Turkey also experienced a major quake in 2011 that killed hundreds. They say this time around, the death toll already exceeds 3,400. So again, this initial report here from Common Dreams was estimating 2,300 at the time of its publication. This one is saying 3,400. But again, if we're going back to numbers like this, and it appears like this earthquake could potentially be even worse, we're talking about upwards of 25,000 at least potentially being dead as a result of these earthquakes that hit. And there was another interesting analysis that I saw about, in terms of like why this one was potentially more destructive, because not only did you have back-to-back earthquakes like the 7.5, 7.8 earthquake and all of the tremors that were associated with that, but also apparently this one was much closer to the surface level, like had much less depth than previous earthquakes, which can also make it that much more impactful for infrastructure and all of that. So it seems like it was just a lot of different things that were lining up to make this that much more dangerous and destructive than it otherwise could have been. But they say there's also, in addition to 3,400 dead in Turkey, more than 1,500 reported dead in neighboring Syria, where the infrastructure was obviously, again, already crumbling after years of civil war. And in both countries, survivors may be under the rubble, but more bodies too, maybe many more, are likely to be found in the coming days under the debris left by an estimated 3,000 structures destroyed by the quake. Okay, so 3,000 structures destroyed by the quake, according to the preliminary estimate by Turkish officials. So, I mean, that, again, could end up rising. But so this is where we get to the actual analysis in terms of like the infrastructure within Turkey and where there potentially could have been some shortcomings. So they say, why did so many buildings fall down? Stewart says that for buildings in Turkey that are more than about 3 stories tall, a usual construction technique is used to reinforce concrete. Okay, so they're using reinforced concrete here. Typically, they basically describe that, like, if you want to have buildings that have a lot more durability during earthquakes, you want to have more like reinforced like steel in certain places. So that, like, if you see in Japan sometimes when they have earthquakes, some of their high-rise buildings are perfectly fine at the end of the day or suffer minimal damage, because you'll see in videos that you can go look up online that like these buildings have a lot of sway to them. They have a significant degree of flexibility, and that's how you earthquake proof a lot of these taller buildings. But it appears like in Turkey, especially with older buildings and even some of the newer ones, they just didn't have that type of construction method that was being deployed. So this is basically what it seems like is a significant reason why this ended up being as destructive as it was. But to finish off the video here, I mean, again, I don't know how much more I can possibly add to this commentary other than to say that, like, this is catastrophic. It's horrible. Obviously, you feel for the people in Turkey, the families of, those who are potentially still stuck under the rubble. You feel for especially the, Syrian refugees who are, just trying to survive and just trying to live their lives and facing a horrible situation in their own home country as well. And then on top of that, I'm going to link down below in the description some access to resources or links if you guys want to go and like contribute in some way or donate to some of these organizations that are helping out on the ground.
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best Politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying